Good morning, everybody. This is the Wednesday, December 11th, 2024 JupyterLab Accessibility and Front-Ends meeting. I'm your host, Eric Gentry. We have a couple of items on the agenda today. Let's see, do we have anybody new in here? I think it's all regulars. If anybody, we're super open to newcomers. So if anybody wants to jump in and say hi, or anybody has a discussion point, please feel free to put those on the agenda or just bring them up during conversation. First up on the agenda is Mike.
All right. So JupyterLab 4.3.3 released. It's a small release, but an important release. Thanks to Nick for help with relaxing the pin on HTTPX version. It can be installed in many environments again. And in general, it's a very nice quality of life improvement patch version. Other than that, let me switch the order in the agenda. Just wanted to flag that there is a pre-proposal for a JEP to implement a standard way of getting representations for objects, like from IPython or another kernel, for the consumption by large language models, so that they can get something in a format which is summarizing the content, but also not overwhelming them with like too much context. Like you don't want to stream the entire 2 GB data frame to the LLM, but you also don't want to just give the same information that you show to the human when rendering it as an HTML. So just flagging that for anyone interested to join the discussion. And a larger discussion, I hope, is about the content providers PR. So I'm linking that here in the chat. So it was stagnant for a little while. The idea here is to enable to remove the RTC colon prefix when using Jupyter collaboration, so that it doesn't break most of the extensions that are available, which rely on the paths. But the other part of the idea with content providers is that we could use them to change how the content is fetched from the server or from any drive, really. So I've tried to look at the code and see what changes are needed to make this content providers PR not only work for RTC, which it already does, but be like a future-proof solution which actually addresses both issues. And that's largely based on the discussions that we already had during the previous meetings, also a little bit inspired by a discussion on Zulip, which Jeremy will mention in a minute, about how to make JupyText work with RTC. So I described basically 3 use cases for content providers. One is RTC. Second is streaming comma-separated values widget. So instead of fetching the entire contents of a data frame saved in a CSV, you will be, when you open the file, you will only get the contents for the range that is visible on your screen. And that has also numerous other applications, such as genome browsers, and also genome browsers have you can scroll through the entire human genome, and it just wouldn't fit in the memory of the server or in your browser. Geospatial browsers, or GIS, I wasn't actually sure if geospatial browsers is the right term, but apparently that's also a valid term. And in that case, which is slightly different from RTC, there is large overlap, but yeah, there are some questions to answer, and I don't want to like steal too much time, so just jump to the gist. If we wanted to be selective about to support the use case of I go to the file browser, click on the file, right click in the context menu, go to open with, and I have my super performant CSV viewer for large files. We would need to allow to change content providers, not based on file path, as it is the case in the PR as of today, but based on arguments to the widget factory, which is how the open with options are currently registered. And that is actually also how Jupyter registers its viewers for the notebook. And if we could make that even work across multiple drives. So if we were just passing like an ID or a token for the content provider, we could then look up which instance of the content provider to use depending on the drive. But like the real discovery, I don't know, maybe someone already thought about this before, but I didn't, is that actually the RTC could be just a viewer, like in open with, and there would be collaborative notebook instead of notebook. And for a file, that would be right click on a file, open with collaborative code editor. And we could make that the default when RTC collaboration is installed. It wouldn't need a prefix in the drive, and it wouldn't need to have any kind of special handling that, well, when because the question is, if we are removing the matching the content provider by path or by file extension, how do we tell JupyterLab that it should use the RTC content provider for everything by default? That would be a way to say, well, for all the notebooks and all the text files, you could just use this widget factory, which is built on top of the default notebook and default text editor. So I just wanted to mention that in case if it's lost in this large wall of text that I posted, but if anyone has thoughts or wants to add them later in the pull request discussion, I would really appreciate that. And that's, of course, in parallel to the discussion on another issue which could solve the RTC problem, and on another pull request, which is 16794. But yeah, I'm especially interested right now in just like a vibe check to see, like, do you folks think that this is a good way to, like, for me, if I opened a new pull request building on top of the current content providers pull request by David, with these changes, like adding the argument for widget factory, removing the matching of extensions, do you think this is the right direction and we could merge that in 4.4?
I think it will already help to remove all of the noise we have on that PR, because now it's becoming a bit complicated to know what the current state is and you know, like things we want to discard. So I would be in favor of having a different PR for sure, if that helps us review that for the 4.
Okay, so yeah, please do read that long comment and add your thoughts and comments. As I will be working to open a new PR, which potentially restarting the discussion. I'm not
Darian
confused.
has
Oh,
some
go ahead.
comments.
I'm sorry because I wasn't here fully for the conversation. So the what are you proposing separating out? I didn't understand that.
So first, I'm proposing to remove the code which tries to match the content provider based on extension. And that's something that Frederick mentioned in the review of this PR, that logic is different than the logic that we already use in document registry to match the file type to the path, based on the path. And once that's removed, the question becomes, okay, but how does the RTC content provider gets registered and used by default? And I'm not 100% sure that this is the solution that we want, but one of the solutions that came to my mind is, well, let's just make it so that when you like right click on a file and go to open with, for Notebook, you have two options. There is Notebook or text editor. Text editor will show you the JSON blob. And RTC could add another one, which is like collaborative Notebook, and make it a default. And in the arguments, pass down that it wants to use the content provider which is suitable for RTC. So this is like a question mark for my next steps, but something which I think is worth exploring.
Yeah, so, and I guess you have an API in mind for that essentially to make that pluggable, those arguments passable.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it sounds great.
Trace the code path, which is a bit crazy. It's
Yeah.
really complex, and like when we open a file, we actually don't call a method which is like get the file contents. The method is called revert, because when you are reverting a file, you are also loading it back from disk. It was a bit of a journey for me today, going through all these code paths to figure it out.
Yeah, as someone who has also tried to get file contents, yeah, I feel you there.
As far as API, I don't know. This is, again, I think I've said this in the past, but it still sounds pie in the sky. But I think what would be a really nice API to do this is fully qualified URLs, where you use the protocol to figure out which content manager basically to use, right? Which content provider to use. So you have RTC : / and that's registered to that content provider, and you have file : / and it's registered to that other one, right? And it's not magical. Everyone can understand it. It's a standard. Like, I know we're not there. I know we're far from that, but that to me is the best possible API to answer this question. And I think many others, like drives in particular, right? So drive could be where server goes, etc., right? But because you're thinking about solving this sort of deep thing, I don't know how far we are from something like that being possible.
So I go for an example where for the streaming content provider, so that the thing that I call streaming content provider, the thing that allows me to open a CSV and only look at a fraction of its content, where I would register it on the default drive, but I would also register a different copy on the, say, Google Drive. So that would work across drives. Now, if we used URIs, and that would also work for drives, how could we combine these two pieces of information? Like what mechanism for fetching data you want to use and what drive you want to use? I'm sure that there are solutions, just trying to get some ideas.
Yeah, sure. So you have, for example, stream:// drive.google.com/ some path, right? So whatever is parsing this URL and routing it, what's it need to do? It needs to find a stream provider, and it needs to have that stream provider well, okay, so what's a stream provider here compared to a contents manager, right? Is a stream provider, sorry, I have to plug in my iPad, it's about to run out of battery, there we go. Is a stream provider what you get when you do service manager.contents?
Yeah, it's like a specialized version of that. Well, yes, specialized is the right word.
Okay, so then you have to basically either never offer the URL stream:// drive.google.com/some path in the UI anywhere, right? Or if you do, what you need to offer is a stream provider that has as one of its drives something called drive.google.com. So you use the contents manager API and you use the URI API and you mapped them, I think, in this way. Does that sound right to you? I mean, keep in mind, I'm thinking out loud.
I don't get it. Maybe if you could write that down in the comments, that would help.
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah. But thank you for explaining it.
Cool. Do we have anything else around this? All right, I think Jeremy's up next.
Yeah. So speaking of 4.4 pre-releases, there is a PR that I think should now be ready. It's about the support for the subshell, the kernel subshells. And Jan has been working on that, and I think he fixed all of the CI. Just wanted to bring that up in case someone would like to help review. And also, I think it would be a great contribution for the 4.4 release. And for such changes, I think it would also be nice to have them early in the release cycle. So if we can have it in an alpha, that would be for the best, because then if there is something wrong with the API, we can still change it easily during the alpha releases without caring too much about backwards compatibility. So that's the first item. And then had two other things. First one is about the weekly meetings that we're having on Zoom. So there's an issue on the governance to switch to a different Zoom room, and that is related to the switch to the Linux Foundation. Concretely, that won't change a lot of things for us. It's just like it would be only a single link, but there would be a different ID and password for the Zoom room. So yesterday with Jason Grout, we did a few tests on that meeting room, just to make sure that we could also record properly the meetings so that they can be uploaded on YouTube afterwards. And it seemed to be working well. And we were wondering if we could maybe already do a test run next week for the Jupyter Frontends call. So that will be next week at that time. Not on this Jovian Zoom room, but using the new one. So we have still 1 week to really check with Jason Grout, make sure we have everything set up. But that would be a good way to test before next year. because then we could then ask all of the Jupyter sub-projects to switch to the new Zoom room if the tests are good. Also taking into account the fact that December 25th and January 1st are both Wednesdays, and I don't think there will be a lot of people attending these meetings during these days. I mean, we can still have them on the calendar, but otherwise we can just cancel them, I guess, because during the winter break for many people here. So yeah, that point here. So there is the governance issue. If you are interested, we can also discuss more after the call if you want.
Will that change the host credentials, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So we'll
yes,
need
yes.
to give that to everybody here, I guess, or I suppose
Yeah.
it will be in the password manager, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it should be available in the 1Password. But this is definitely the kind of details that it's good to have a test run for, because then we can catch all of the things that we probably are going to miss anyway. Yeah,
Great.
batch
Thanks.
credentials and who should have access to this. So I think the idea is to have this switch like to be as smooth as possible, to not put too much work on the council members. Yeah. And finally, another more meta question is about the switch to Zulip. So we discussed that last week. There is an issue, a pull request to point users to Zulip instead of Gitter metrics. So what do you think about implementing that change until next week or even before, if everybody is okay with that? I don't think we need a vote for such decisions, but we can have one if people want to. But if there is already a consensus on moving to Zulip, then we should just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know if anybody else following the conversation, I'm definitely in favor of this as well. I think it's clearly a better solution than Gitter. There's some details to work out, like how do we want to use the channels and topics features, but all of that stuff I think can be worked out.
Yeah, and there are already a couple of people, hanging out there, which is nice because it's also a way to have, folks from other sub projects. I think the Jupyter Hub folks, they are also starting using it. And about like the questions of how to structure channels, there is, I think, a discussion about that
There is,
on
yeah.
Zulip. Yeah. So, yeah, and no strong opinions on this, but I think we can always improve the structure over time as we depending on how people use it. For now, I think we've been only using it for release coordination and just talking about let's say a lab or a notebook for between us. But as long as we keep the main information on GitHub anyway, I think it's fine. Yeah.
I'm gonna try to submit some PRs for updating docs as well this week.
Yeah, I think over trying to plan it is not super useful. I mean, it was nice. It was not, that was the nice thing about Gitter. There was a natural thing that was like, you're talking about code, but if we're trying to drive more people there, we don't really need to go too crazy on it, especially since almost everybody can move things. So I don't know if it's like, I don't get any special permissions or anything. I can just move stuff. So I don't think it's super dangerous. But it does bother me. It doesn't do italics. You can't make italics. Why? Why is that? It's like half of Markdown.
Well, you can always hit up the Zulip guys. I popped into their chat and asked about increasing the combined feed length, and that has been, I think it's been merged. So they're very responsive to feedback.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe you like discourse, you can put too much stuff in the discourse and then it gets weird. So I guess they're kind of protecting that. Can't draw everything everywhere.
As far as I know we had some of us have been talking about being interested in having the chats be indexable by search engines. It looks like maybe they're discussing that in the Zulip org. I don't think that's not completed yet, as far as I know. But that's something that interesting that we could potentially roll a custom solution for too, because Zulip has an API. So that's another thing to think about. Philip, you have a hand up. You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was saying I'm a Jupyter enthusiast and a Zulip enthusiast, and so happy to answer any questions about Zulip. I'm not any kind of like core developer or anything, but I use it for my project Dataverse. And as to, yes, I definitely want like better SEO of the Zulip conversations. And there is a workaround they have right now. I think they call it Zulip Archive or something. They basically give you a GitHub action and you create a copy of all your chats in GitHub pages, say, and then Google and everything will index that. So, but yes, I think longer term, better solution should, so you don't need that workaround is in the works, but I don't know where it is on their timeline.
Do you know if we need to, is it a matter of changing a setting somewhere? Or do we have to, I guess, is there more work to do to enable that?
It's not just a setting. You would create a new empty repo on GitHub, add the GitHub action, and then it would run every night or whatever, and it would just pull in the latest posts and
Okay.
make like a static HTML version of the posts.
Do they have tooling around that already, sort of, or do you know?
I'm not sure what you mean by tooling, but they'll give you a GitHub action to use. Just copy
Okay.
it.
It's good to know. Yeah, thanks. Darian?
I just signed into the Jupyter Zulip chat, and it might be because I use multi-container on Firefox, so that I have different self-contained sessions for GitHub. But I was using the Zulip desktop application for Mac OS, tried to authenticate with GitHub, landed in Firefox, authenticated, but then got sent to auth.zulipchat.com instead of jupyter.zulipchat.com. And I couldn't get in because I couldn't finish. So I realized if I just tried to log in a separate browser, not using the desktop app and being signed into GitHub, I can get around this and get in. But if anybody else is using the desktop client and has an issue logging in, try doing it from your browser. It should solve your problem.
Thanks, Darian.
I've had a similar experience where I wanted to sign into the desktop client, and it was my default browser is not the browser where I am signed into the GitHub. So I basically turned off internet, turned off Wi-Fi, clicked on the sign in link. It opened it in the default browser, and then I moved that, copy pasted that link to the correct browser. Because if you just copy paste the links with Wi-Fi on, it very quickly redirects to a different page without the token that you need. So yeah, tricky workaround.
If anybody's interested in, I guess, chatting about that with the Zulip folks, I dropped a link to the support thread that I made, so you can go to that same channel or whatever and ask questions or talk about issues. So if anybody wants to do that, there's a link to that in the chat. And then anything else here before we move on? All right, I think Mike has one more item.
Yeah, I just remembered. So there is an issue where it's impossible to scroll away from the active cell. which affects users who have very long cells with lots of code. And we narrowed it down to an issue in code mirror, which was emitting a focus in event when scrolling over lots of code, and there was like a very, very edgy edge case. And there is a PR to upgrade code mirror dependencies, and it looks good. All the tests are passing, but because there is so many changes in there, it would benefit from more testing. It is likely to be merged and released into an alpha for 4.4 soon. But in the meantime, if you have a Mac and can open the binder linked in this PR, is already built. If you happen to be on the same zone where I am, it will be built. And if you could test control space, I think Shift Alt M on macOS, which is, I don't know if macOS has all these keys. It should have, I guess. And see whether that changes anything about the experience with around Jupyter for you. Because sometimes when code mirror adds key bindings, we might need to override them. I don't think this is the case, but oh no, it's old backtick.
So what does toggle tab focus mode actually do? It says it provides control over the view's tab focus mode, but I'm not sure what that means.
So I believe this is something that we could use. So these are new commands in code mirror, which we could use to enhance the behavior around tab navigation. This is unrelated to macOS. It's just, I know like when I was looking at the so you're not looking at noteworthy changes, you're looking at control and triggering this new command. That's a good question. Like one, what this key binding, whether this key binding conflicts with any action expected in Jupyter on macOS. I think control M actually, I could test that on Linux as well. And second, what this action does. And I think it might influence the tab order and our like accessibility navigation around Notebook. So yeah, it would be best if we could test that, but if Control M is not bound to anything important in any common extension, then maybe that's okay if pressing it changes how tab navigation behaves.
So I am running this right now. I just got the binder going, and I'm hitting Alt Shift M or Option Shift M, and I'm not seeing anything happen when I'm in a code mirror cell.
Can you insert tabs indent?
So tabs, whether or not so I don't see any kind of feedback when I hit Option Shift M. I could probably just share my screen briefly if that's okay. So this is what I am looking at, the binder, based on that pull request. So if I hit Option Shift M, nothing seems to happen. And now if I tab, I'm seeing things change. If I hit Option Shift M again and I hit tab, oh, okay. So now tab just unfocuses the cell. That's
Yeah,
probably
so this
that's
is
probably a
like
bug.
and that's kind of what I was expecting that might happen.
Okay.
Not the icon back. That's yeah.
Is that a known issue, that bug?
No.
Okay, I'll follow that.
Thank you,
If you can
Jason.
reproduce. The question is this a bad thing or is it a good thing? Like it seems like a good thing because it improves accessibility. Like, of course, in Jupyter, you could just press escape and then tap, and now it would work the same way.
Mm-hmm.
but is this Alt-Shift-M in any way like associated with other things that you would expect in browser on macOS, or with used by any popular extension for JupyterLab?
Not that
This is
I
the
know of.
larger question.
Well, the interesting thing is that on Mac, when you're editing text, Option is used to select different to type different characters. So on my US keyboard, if I type Option M by itself, I get the letter mu in Greek, and if I do Option Shift M, I get an A with a circumflex accent. That's real small. I'm sorry, I can't see that. And it probably will work differently on different keyboards. So technically, yes, Option Shift M will do something. And unfortunately, we do run into problems like this sometimes where like Control 1 in certain languages, or like Option 1 is a character you actually need. We see this a lot with like French language users because there's like 5 different French keyboards that people use. And on a lot of them, Shift and Option with letters and numbers or symbols is like an @ sign or a brace or a bracket that you really need to write code. So I wish I had a pile of different keyboards to test it out with, but with my US keyboard, it seems fine, but I don't want to speak for the whole world.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's the end of the agenda. Does anybody else have anything on the record?
Eric, you already unfortunately had to sit through all this, but the follow-on to the TypeDoc upgrade is up now. It goes to 27, and that needs a few new things, but it fixes some other things. There's some screenshots. The actual thing that was behind that is getting Mermaid 11 up. I need to fix the inevitable Galata fails, but that also appears to be working. Now there's a Kanban diagram. Okay, fine. But it does have some very nice things in it, and isn't going to ping on people's security scanners and stuff like that. So those are both in flight.
Thanks, Nick. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I also point to an issue at the bottom in some future work section. The maintainer tools checklinks action looks at RST, MD, IPyNB. That cannot be changed. That's all it will look at, which means it's not looking at HTML. So we're not actually link checking what we actually sell to people on Read the Docs. We're just checking some stuff. So that means there's probably lots of broken links on the site because just nobody's looking. So I don't know if that's like, don't just change maintainer tools, start reading people's HTML because it's, it looks at the entire repo. So that's going to find all kinds of nonsense. But that's probably a thing that we need to at least have a way for people to do it. The checklinks action that we use, it already has to build TypeDoc, which takes 5 minutes. Building Sphinx would cost like 20 seconds on top of that after installing it with pip. So it would provide a lot more value to check the as ship site, but there's nuance to it because things like a readme.md, that's going to be presented in a number of places. That's going to be presented on GitHub. It's going to be presented on PyPy, might be presented on npmjs.com. So, that's like one regime of link checking. Basically, you can't use relative links ever on those pages. And then, when you get into a doc site, things are different. And then Mist is in there creating all kinds of other problems with its magic rewrites. So there's just lots of enjoyable things to worry about. That is all. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Should we
ahead.
manage that pull requests right now, or is it better to first make a release, an alpha release, with the previous TypeDoc upgrade, just for the sake of having a copy to come back to online to compare between those two versions? Is there any benefit in that, or just merge away and release once?
Well, I mean, the reasons I like 27, and they're outlined in there. One, it has fewer dependencies. So they actually dropped some dependencies between 26 and 27, which is magnificent. Two, it can render the new GitHub admonitions, which apparently we're using in places, as opposed to mist admonitions, which only work in mist, but whatever. Apparently those are the GitHub ones are bad for accessibility because they don't indicate it anyway with a role or anything, whatever. Point is, we're using them already. We either need to stop using the GitHub admonitions, or we need to, fully support them and maybe not make them quite as garbage. But I don't want to do that. So having a latest with 26, maybe, I don't know. I didn't do the full forensics to see like who is linking to specific pages where the URLs had changed, which again is an internationalization issue. So I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, I think 27 will be better for us, but yeah, I don't know about. Do we get version? So if we cut a tag, will that exist as 4.4.0 alpha 1 on Read the Docs?
No,
I don't think
no.
I
Actually,
don't think we
no.
activate those.
No, that's actually a point we should update, because like the version selector has 4.0, 4.1, and there's no 4.2.
Wait, what?
No 4.2.
Gross.
There's stable and latest, so that's fine. But we are missing
Well,
4.2.
ain't doodly squat locked down, so your chances of being able to actually get those to build are very low. You can try.
Not really. 4.2. 4.2 we are still doing backports.
Oh, the branch, not the tag.
Yeah, branch.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's fine. You can fix a branch, but I'm just saying like a point in time,
Okay, I guess the takeaway is let's merge these pull requests of yours. Yeah, I will do that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's writing links against the latest from yesterday today.
All right. Anybody else have anything on the record? I guess I should just note that Darian had to drop, but he said, I just wanted to say, please nominate yourself or someone else to run for the EC if you're a member of the JupyterLab Council. Please read the message about this in the mailing list. Apologies that I can't stick around to talk about it. So everybody check the mailing list about that. All right, brace yourselves. We'll stop the recording.